Okay, everyone, thank you for taking time to vote in that poll there. Hope you've got a comfy virtual chair there. This is the webinar for creating a lead generation plan for your MSP. I'm going to go ahead and close the poll, and I will share that with everyone so we can see here. Today's my guest is Mr. Richard Tubb, MSP Guru and Consultant. Hello, Richard. Okay, Richard.
How you doing, Scott?
There you go. Okay. No, I just wanted to get some of your kind of your comments on the poll here that you're seeing as answers.
Oh, sure. Well, no surprise, to be honest. Most MSPs I speak to don't really have a system for lead generation at all. They rely on word of mouth referral, so no surprises there. Hopefully we can change some perspectives with our webinar today.
Okay, great. Thanks, Richard. We are a couple housekeeping things. We are, in fact, recording this webinar. It will be available in the next couple of days. You'll get a link from the GoToMeeting software where it tells you where you can download that at the MSP Business Management site. It'll also be on iTunes if you look for MSP Business Management. That shows up there after we post it. Also, if you want to ask any questions of Richard, we've set some time here at the end of the webinar for a question and answer. So if you'll just post your question to the little question interface on your dashboard there, it'll get to me, and then I'll get it over to Richard. And then also we'll compile all these. They save all these. So even if we don't get to your question, I can forward these over to Richard. He can take a look at them, and we can kind of go from there. So let me close this poll now. Then I have to show my screen. Okay. All right, Richard, looks like you are on deck, sir, so go ahead and take it away.
Well, thanks very much, Scott. A pleasure to join you again this afternoon. Who am I? I'm Richard Tubb, based out of Birmingham in the UK. And very briefly, I used to run my own MSP business here in Birmingham. And I grew it from a one-man band up until I sold the business at the end of 2010. And now my time is spent working with IT companies who want help to grow their business. So I help them to use their time more effectively to systemize the business and to help them gain more clients, which is going to be the topic of today's webinar. And I'm really honored that MSP Business Management have asked me to present again. This is it's not the first webinar we've done together, but I always have a lot of fun doing these webinars, and it's thanks to the questions I get asked, to be honest. We always have very vocal audiences in these webinars. So today's webinar, as Scott said, is interactive. Anybody who's seen me present before will know that I'm much less about the slides and much more about the conversation. So please feel free to ask questions using the chat facility or on Twitter using the hashtag MSPLeadGen. And Scott and I will answer them as we go along. And ask Scott to send me
Twitter.
time. Yeah.
Very nice, Richard. Yeah, okay, it's already like I'm running the space shuttle over here, so you're going to have to watch the Twitter feed.
I'll watch the Twitter feed, no worries.
Okay.
We've already had a couple of questions there, so so if you don't get your question answered during the session, and Scott and I are usually quite good at answering as many questions as we can, feel free to reach out to us on Twitter, and we'll do our best to answer them there. So let's get started then. Marketing. Today's webinar is all about creating a lead generation plan for your MSP, which most people, when they think lead generation, think marketing. And I think, in summary, the mistake I see a lot of MSPs make is treating marketing like an event. So they think, okay, our pipeline is empty, we need new clients, we'd better start marketing. Well, the trouble with this approach is that finding and nurturing new MSP clients does take time. And so if you're not consistently taking the activities that will find you new clients, if you're not consistently doing marketing to generate leads, you'll be fighting an uphill battle. So instead, what I'm going to try and focus on today is helping you to start thinking about marketing or lead generation as a system, almost a habit that I want you to build, something that you do every day, every week, every month as part of your standard business routine. You need to build consistency over marketing. If you are taking the activities, the results, in other words, new clients, will come along. Have no doubt about that. And quite often I hear from MSPs when I talk about marketing lead generation, they say, I'm no good at marketing. I understand that. I'm a technician myself. I'm a geek. I got into this business to help clients with their IT problems. But the reality of it is you need to get good at lead generation. You need to get good at marketing. And when I hear people say I'm no good at marketing, it reminds me of a story that my really good friend and MSP expert Carl Palachuk once told me. Now, if anybody's not reading Carl's blog, Small Biz Thoughts, I'd encourage you to go and check that out. Lots of good advice there. But Carl basically told me he was sat in his office one Friday afternoon, and he received a cold call actually from one of his competitors in the Sacramento area. And it was a young lad doing some cold calling, and this guy just wasn't very good on the phone at all. He mumbled and he bumbled his way through his cold calling script, and Carl had a bit of fun before eventually saying, hey, we're not going to buy from you, I'm actually a competitor. Carl put the phone down, had a little chuckle over this kid phoning him, and then told me that he was struck with the realization that lad had probably made 100 of those type of calls. And however bad, however awful he was on the phone with his technique doing that cold call, he's probably going to win more business than Carl did that week because Carl didn't pick up the phone and make a single outbound call. So I wonder how many people are on the call today are nodding along and thinking, well, yeah, I'm not taking the activities, I'm not doing the marketing because I'm worried about getting good at it. The moral of the story here is start taking the activities and the results will come. You can work out getting good as you go along. Don't worry about being good at marketing, just worry about starting marketing and building good habits. You can get better as you go along. So Scott, if we can move along to the next slide. Now, one way to ensure you take the activities that will generate new leads is to rate yourself with a scorecard. Now, this is a process I go through with a lot of my MSP clients that we work with. And it really, the best way to describe it is it almost creates a competitive nature with you and your marketing where every week, every month, every quarter, you want to take the activities that you know are going to generate leads for you. And this is a really simple one. So hopefully you can see the screenshot of a really basic lead generation scorecard. And everybody can do this. It's creating a simple Excel spreadsheet or a Google Apps spreadsheet. At the top you have columns labeled activity, how do we measure, goal, and then week ending. Activity, how do we measure, goal, and week ending. On the spreadsheet under activity, we're going to be listing the lead generation activity that we're going to take. For instance, business networking. In the next column under how do we measure, we're going to explain as a reminder to ourselves, and in fact anybody else in the business who fills in this spreadsheet as we go along, we're going to explain how we make sure we've taken that activity. So let's use our example of business networking. We all know that turning up for a business networking event is the first success, but it's really not enough. It's not enough that we just turn up at a business networking event. We want to make sure that we meet 3 new people every time we go along to a business networking event. What's more, we want to make sure that we swap business cards with them. So we then connect with them on LinkedIn afterwards and we can follow up with them effectively. So underneath the how do we measure, we say we attended a business networking event, we met 3 people, we swapped business cards with them, and we connected with them and followed up with them on LinkedIn. So you can see that's how we measure. The next column is goal. Really, really simple here. How often do we take the activity? How often do we want to be taking the activity? Is it weekly? Is it daily even? Is it daily? Is it weekly? Is it monthly? Or is it quarterly? Some activities we're not going to take very often, but it's important that we consistently take them quarterly all the same. And then in the final column, under the week ending, we create a number of columns creating the dates. Well, why do we do this? Well, you're going to set a reminder in your Outlook or your Google Apps to visit this scorecard each week and record the activities that you've taken. We're not worried about results at the moment. We're talking about recording the activities that you've taken. I recommend doing this of a Friday morning. When I used to follow this plan for my own MSP, I used to fill this in at 10 o'clock on a Friday morning. Why? Well, if you're anything like me, you will procrastinate. You will let other things get in the way. You will continue to work on your business, in your business rather than on it. And if you visit the scorecard on a Friday morning at 10 a.m. and see all the stuff that you haven't done, you've still got a few hours left that week to make sure you do get stuff done. And we're going to talk through some of the activities. So let's say, for instance, you're going to set a goal to phone an existing client once every week. Well, you probably won't do that, but then of a Friday morning, when you update this, you're going to basically have the opportunity to make a phone call to your client. So let's move along, Scott, and let's talk about some of the activities that you're actually going to fill in on this lead generation scorecard. And let's focus on business networking firstly. I can tell you right now, while cold calling, social networking, direct marketing, websites, and all of those traditional marketing activities are really important, and we'll cover those shortly, the best thing you can do right now to begin growing your business is to build and nurture relationships. So when I said at the top of the hour, I wasn't surprised where I think it was 60% of the MSPs on the call said that word of mouth was their top marketing activity or lead generation activity. No surprise at all. In the business space that we work in, predominantly, small business, it's all about relationships. It's all about building up relationships that generate referrals and more work. Business networking is a great way to make sure you build new relationships outside of your existing circle. So you get to meet new people, and the most effective way to do this is to get out there and do it. In any town or city in the world, certainly here in Birmingham, London, New York, everywhere I've been, there's dozens and dozens of business networking events every week, and you can fit them into to suit your schedule, basically. Whether you're a morning person, you could go along to a business breakfast club such as BNI. If you're not a morning person, check your local chamber of commerce. They typically have lunch meetings and evening meetings as well. Whatever you prefer, make sure to get out there and do it consistently. Now, Scott and I and Chris and I did a webinar about business networking a long time ago now. I think it was about a year ago, and the recording should still be available. So if you do a Google search on MSP Business Management, so if you want more tips about business networking, that might still be relevant to you.
I'll go ahead and I'm sorry,
please,
Richard, I'll put that link up there for you for everyone.
Please, yeah. I think it's. I'm going to guess it's 2011 now. So when I said last year,
it was
it's
way back
more than
there.
that.
Yeah.
Way back then, yeah. But
okay.
Chris and I did a couple of those webinars. But in a nutshell, on this webinar, don't go to networking events looking to sell. Everybody's heard the old adage: people do business with people they like. So, and this is difficult for me, somebody who likes the sound of his own voice, but you've got to listen to the other person. You've got to ask them what they enjoy about what they do when you meet them at networking events. Ask them who their perfect customer would look like. And then look to make introductions. Really, really simple. So you go along, everybody's a little bit nervous at these events. I'm not a great business networker. I always get nervous walking into a room full of people. But if you're looking to put the other person first and looking to listen, you'll actually be quite remarkable. You will stand out in that room. Trust me when I say this. Any of us who have been to business networking events know the type of people, the business networking bulldogs, I call them, in the room, who are just working the room at a rapid pace trying to sell to people. And of course, nobody's interested in that. So if you put the other person first, if you listen to what they're talking about their business, about their perfect customers, then you can look to make introductions between them and other people. You'll become valuable to people by doing this. And in turn, I can tell you it's human nature for people to want to reciprocate. So the leads will come. You might think, well, Richard, how does this work if I'm not looking to sell to anybody in the room? Human nature to reciprocate. The leads will come along, and often in ways you'd never have suspected. So don't go into a room and think, this isn't somebody that I can sell to, they're of no interest to me. Go in, talk to them, listen to what they've got to say about their business, and then think, who could I introduce this person to who they could do business with? And you'll make yourself very valuable by doing that. And as I say, in turn, it's human nature to try and reciprocate, and people will introduce you, possibly, to perfect leads for you. The leads will come. One final tip about networking before we move on for this slide, and what I'll do, Scott, is I'll just pause to take any questions. Networking, as I said, schedule time after the event to follow up with people. Hugely important. Don't let business cards gather dust on your desk. And I'd imagine there's going to be some wry smiles on the call here, because how many of us have gone to a business networking event in lots of energy, met new people, took the business cards, come back to the office, put them on our desk, let them gather dust, and never followed up with people. It's crazy. Make sure you input the card details into Microsoft Outlook or Google Contacts or your CRM system. Connect with that person on LinkedIn and then follow up with them by email. Make sure when you follow up with them on LinkedIn or by email that you mention the event you met them at and what you were talking about. So you might think that you're the most important person in the room and very, very memorable to people, but if you're anything like me, with a memory span of a goldfish, you'd forget who you met, who you were talking to, and just by reminding them where you met and what you were talking about, it's just that little memory jog, and you'll find a lot more people will be inclined to connect with you and to follow up with you there. So I'll pause at that stage. We were talking about business networking, Scott, but how are we doing for questions there?
I think we're doing okay. I think everybody's a little shy. It's like they're coming to the networking event for the first time. They're not quite sure what they're doing. So, but feel free to ask questions through the chat interface. We did have one from Jim here that was pretty interesting. He was wondering if are people going to be able to get a copy of that spreadsheet you put up there?
That's a really good question. I can absolutely do that. I mean, it's really, really simple to put together, but I'd be happy to. So if we can get a hold of Jim's contact details, or anybody who wants to reach out to me on Twitter, and I'll make sure I'll put something like that together to send out to people.
Yeah, I mean, this actually sounds like a good article we could get up on business management and throw up a copy of that spreadsheet. Okay, are we next slide?
Cool.
Are we on the next slide?
Yeah, next slide.
Okay. Wait, hold on. Okay, got too many controls. Okay, there you go, Richard. Radio silence for me.
You're on the dock of the Starship Enterprise there, right?
That's right.
Tons of buttons going on. So.
Warp factor 5. All right.
Okay, so the next activity that everybody on the call here can take straight away is picking up the telephone and calling people. Now, I mentioned at the top of the hour that it's all about building and nurturing relationships. Picking up the telephone is a really easy way to do that. And again, if you think about it, if you're anything like me, your inbox is crammed full of emails from people. So it's actually quite remarkable nowadays to pick up the telephone and to call people. You can really make yourself stand out. And you've all heard the phrase, I'd imagine you've all heard the phrase, right place, right time. And you've probably heard the phrase, out of sight, out of mind. So make sure you're in the right place at the right time to win business, and make sure you're front of mind by regularly telephoning people, not emailing them, telephoning them. And who am I talking about? Who are these people that you want to be calling? Well, I'm not specifically talking about cold calling here. It is a marketing activity. It's also one that fills most of us full of dread. So what I'm talking about here is picking up the phone and calling your existing clients. Not to fix a ticket, not to fix a support ticket or fix an issue. Pick up the phone and ask them how business is going. More often than not, in my experience, they'll share with you their plans, what's on their minds at the moment, and they'll ask you how you can help them. So, really interesting one. The number of times I've phoned clients up and say, "Hey Joe, how's it going down there?" "Oh, it's going fine, Richard. Actually, we're thinking about taking somebody new on." "Oh, okay, you might be interested in, you might need to get a new PC there. And you might need to give us the heads up and give us a phone call when they take that person on so we can set them up. And you might need a new a Microsoft Office license. You might need a new license for the CRM product." So by picking up the telephone, you're in the right place at the right time there. And there's probably a number of us on the phone as well. In fact, I was speaking to an MSP just yesterday based in London. And I said, "Have you ever spoken to your clients and they've said, 'Oh, I've just bought a new printer,' and you say to them, 'Oh, we could have got you a really good printer,' and they say to you, 'Oh, I didn't know you did that.'" Well, if you're consistently picking up the telephone and calling your clients just for a chat, they will mention things like this to you. They will say, "Actually, I'm glad you called, Richard. We were thinking about getting a new printer. Is that something you can help with?" So when we talk about lead generation, don't underestimate how many leads you can generate from existing clients. You'll also, by picking up the telephone and calling people, you'll find that Joe, the other end, will say, actually, I was just speaking to somebody yesterday. I've been meaning to introduce you to them. Let me pass across the details now. So you'll pick up referrals merely by picking up the telephone as well. So calling existing clients is really important. On that lead generation scorecard, I would at a minimum recommend you're calling 1 client a week. And as I said, this is not for a support activity. This is not for an outstanding issue they've got. This is just picking up the telephone, calling them, and asking them how things are going. You'll generate work there. Who else should you be calling consistently? How about your vendor account managers? So some people might be thinking, what? Why would I be calling my vendors? Why would I be calling my suppliers? In fact, many of you will be saying, actually, Richard, I'm honest, I avoid my vendor account managers when they phone me because they're just trying to sell me stuff. So I can tell you from experience, if you phone them to let them know the deals that you're working on and ask them how they can help you, you'll uncover all sorts of leads. Again, right place, right time. The amount of times that I phoned my vendor account managers just for a chat and to say, hey, we're working on this deal, we're working on that. And then for the vendor account management to say, actually, we've got some marketing funds coming up. That might be useful for you for those type of deals. Or the other one is, actually, we had a customer phone us directly, an end user phone us directly this morning. Let me pass them your details. Again, right place, right time. And the old phrase, out of sight, out of mind, make sure that you are front of mind by phoning your customers and phoning your vendors. Another person, another set of people that you should be calling on a regular basis, strategic alliance partners. Now, what do I mean by strategic alliance partners? Some of you may be familiar with the term, but if you're not, a strategic alliance partner is somebody, another business that you're friendly with, who provides an activity that is outside of your core competencies, who you work with on a regular basis. Typical strategic alliance partners for MSPs might be telecoms companies, might be VoIP companies, might even be photocopy companies, electricians, data cablers, all the type of people who your clients need to work with but is outside your core competency. So when you've built up some of these alliances, phone them up again, ask them how business is going. And I've won more business by calling strategic alliance and business friends who have then said, hey, I'm really glad you called, Richard. You couldn't have timed that call any better because I've just had a piece of work come in and I think you'd be perfect for it. Again, right place, right time. If you're out of sight, you're often out of mind, so make sure that you're front of mind with all of these people, with customers, with your vendors, with your strategic alliance partners and your business friends. And I'm going to pause there, Scott, in case we've got any questions coming in.
Yeah, we got a couple that was actually relating to cold calling or calling. Corey was wanting to know, or I don't, maybe it's not Corey if I get this wrong, forgive me, but he's asking how often should you call a specific client, which that sounds like more like a friendly call.
Yeah, so a friendly call, certainly if you're a one-man band, the onus is on you to be making the calls. But even if you're a slightly, a bigger MSP, within my MSP, once we started growing, the senior members of staff, the directors within the business, were calling at least 1 client a week. So, even if you've got a dozen clients, 1 a week, that means you're speaking to them at least once a quarter. I would actually do it more often. And, I talk about calling clients. If you've got the time, go out and visit your clients. Say hello to them and you'll get a good feel for what's going on within the business. Floor walk around. Ask everybody if everything's how it's going. I appreciate as MSPs we quite often don't have the time to do these things, which is why I would say pick up the telephone. But measure those activities and phone at least 1 client a week. Not for a support call, not to pick up on a ticket, but just to ask them how their business is going. So I hope that answers the question, Corey, but try that. Try phoning 1 a week, and I virtually guarantee you'll pick up extra business.
Okay, well, no, it sounds like a lot of these we can save for the end here. We want to get save the best for last, Richard, so carry on there, and we'll just keep going.
No worries. Okay, so if we move along to the next slide. And the next slide, creating client stories. How many of us would say they've got happy clients? The majority of us, I think. I like to think within my business I've got happy clients. But how many of us have actually got testimonials from our clients to say how happy they are? Now, you're doing great work for them. And by capturing your efforts, you can bring in new clients who want you to help them too. But many of us say things about client stories, about testimonials, I mean to get round to doing that. So I'm saying put this on your lead generation scorecard and ask a client at least once a month, and in the first instance you can ask one a week, to be honest. Ask them for a testimonial. The best time to get a testimonial is at the end of a project or after you've just delivered work to a happy client. They're going to be in a great place, they're going to be in a good, feeling good about you, and they'll be happy to say good things about you. When I talk about client testimonials, don't get overawed here. Don't think, oh wow, this is going to be a lot of work. A client testimonial could be as simple as capturing a soundbite or a quote for use on your website. What you're doing, you're giving social proof to people. You're giving them examples of how you're helping other people. You could ask happy clients to leave you positive feedback on vendor partner portals like Microsoft Pinpoint or the Google Partner Directory or Yell.com. Any of those websites typically work on almost like an eBay feedback type of system, don't they? How many reviews do you have on those websites for your business? So what I'm saying here is, if you're listing this as an activity on a weekly or at least a monthly basis, over time you're going to put yourself head and shoulders above all of your competitors on these websites. Going a step further, you could create a single A4 client case study demonstrating how you solved a problem for a client. I've got some clients who do this really, really well. One of my clients tries to produce one of these A4 client case studies at least once a month. It's not difficult because all you're doing is explaining what you did to help a client with a problem and explaining how you helped them solve that problem. But by creating these case studies, it's an especially powerful way to support your other marketing activities. Let me give you an example. So if you write a case study, you could actually use it as the basis of a letter you send to potential new clients. So let's say that you help one client with off-site backup. And so you create a single A4 sheet of demonstrating how the client was worried about losing data, how you helped them with off-site backup. You could then use that case study, print it off and send it out as a letter to 30 prospects saying, hey, we've helped these people with off-site backup. I wonder if we can help you. You can share the case study at networking events. So how many of us go along to networking events with little or no collateral, little or no marketing material? And those people we see go along to networking events with marketing collateral typically to end up have more people talking to them, because it's a talking point. You can share this with prospective clients who you're speaking to already as evidence of your quality. So when they're saying, we're not really sure, Richard, whether we should work with you or not, you can say, totally understand. Here, take a look at this case study we've done for a piece of work for another business very similar to yours, and feel free to give them a call if you want to understand how we helped them. You can share links to case studies on social networking. You can even share it with your vendor partners to show them how you're using their products and services in the real world. So you can see a single case study. You can use it at networking events. You can use it as direct mail. You can share it with prospective clients as a testimonial almost. You can share it on social networking. You can put it on your website. You can share it with vendor partners. How many activities have I just mentioned there that you're probably not doing at the moment that you could easily start to do with a single A4 client case study? So client case studies are really, really important. Don't be put off thinking you've got to make them huge and they've got to be polished and wonderful. A single soundbite in the first instance could be all that you need to put on your website. So I'm going to pause there, Scott. I can see questions coming in on Twitter. How are we doing with questions?
Yeah, it's good. Actually, we have another gentleman such as yourself, Herman Poole, or another MSP guru that's kind of in the States, who on client testimonials, he talks about at their business they have a video camera set up by the reception area, or where people come in to pay their bills or what have you, and right there they ask people, would you be comfortable with giving us a testimonial? And that easy as that, then they'll get a minute worth of how they help the customer right there. Then they can put it on the website, do things like that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, video is, I'm a huge fan of it. I carry around, as you know, Scott, I've got a Flip HD camera, and I take those around and grab, testimonials from clients. Really, really simple to do. Those Vox Pop type videos, 90 seconds of somebody talking straight to camera, really, really valuable. You can put them up on your website. You can put them up on YouTube. In fact, I'm going to give a shout out to one of my clients, Kimberly IT, just to show you the power of videos. James Kimberley's website at www.kimberley.com. Go and take a look at the video that James has put up there, and he's having really great success. It's a professionally produced video. Didn't cost a huge amount of money for James, but a really good example of how you can use video, because people like to see videos nowadays. So a really good point.
Okay, Richard. Well, why don't we just keep moving on here? We do have some good questions about that, but I think we can fit them all at the end there.
No worries. Okay. So those, we've talked about business networking. We've talked about picking up the telephone. We've talked about creating client stories. 3 activities there that you can see with multiple sub-activities that you can take. But for anybody who tells me, I haven't got the time to do marketing, if you focus on business networking, picking up the telephone and creating client stories, you're suddenly doing quite a lot of marketing. And all of us can make time to take these activities because they don't take very long to do. But there's other activities, of course, lead generation. What I would say is don't try and, if you're going from a starting point where you're doing little or no marketing activities at the moment, don't think, oh wow, I've got to be doing all of these things. Even if you just do one, business networking and following up effectively, you will win business, I guarantee it. Picking up the telephone, as we said, is easy for all of us to do. Easy. So, there's really no excuses for not doing that and seeing the work come in as well. And creating client stories, you all know, everybody knows that you should really be capturing effective testimonials from people already. So I'd encourage you to do that. The other type of activities that you can take, though, and again, you can fill these in on the lead generation scorecard. Some of these are a quarterly activity. So, for instance, create a competition or a giveaway. This is a great way to capture email addresses, to get prospective customers to put their hands up and say, actually, I'm quite interested in what you're doing here by giving something away. One example that I've used in the past was we held a competition for local non-for-profits, local charities. And we said we would give away a year's worth of support for the charity who put forward the best case. We ended up with 10 charities locally who got in touch with us and said, hey, we'd love a year's worth of IT support. Of course, we gave the support away to one charity for a year. And you might say, well, isn't that quite expensive? Yes, but we've got 9 other charities who we knew needed IT support. And they were telling us exactly why they needed IT support. So how easy do you think it was to market then to those other 9 charities, and how much business did we end up picking up as a result? So creating a competition or a giveaway is a great way to do that. You could be writing a press release, getting your name out there in the local press. I used to do this very effectively with my MSP business. Mrs. Tubb, Ma Tubb, was very happy to see her baby boy in the local press on a regular basis. And it was interesting. Once I started doing press on a regular basis, going along to networking events, people would say, hey, we saw you in the local paper the other week, and it's a great talking point. So press releases are not difficult. If you need some help, there's usually somebody at your local BNI group or your local business networking group who can help you doing copywriting and doing press releases. But a great way to raise your profile and get out there. Direct marketing. on a monthly basis, it's I've already given you the opportunity here through the client case studies or the client stories of a way you can be doing direct marketing. But very, very simply, I'll share an example of how I did this within my business. Pick the type of clients that you enjoy working with, pick up the Yellow Pages or do a Google search and find 30 of those type of clients in the local area. So it could be opticians, optometrists, for instance. You enjoy working with them. Send a letter out to other optometrists in the area explaining what you can do for them, how you can help them, and then follow that up with a call later. And again, direct marketing, I think, is an area of marketing that is probably underutilized nowadays. Everybody tries to use email marketing instead, and of course we tend to ignore email marketing, email spam. Direct marketing, sending a postcard or a letter through the post, is still effective. Cold calling, wow, the one that scares everybody off. Cold calling new prospects. Well, as I mentioned in the story from my friend Carl Polachek at the start of the hour, if you're not doing it, you're not going to win the business. If you're doing it, even if you're doing it badly, you're much more likely to be in the right place at the right time and speak to somebody who needs what you're selling. So it fills us all full of fear. The best advice I can give is just get on and do it. The more you do it, the more comfortable you are at doing it. Exhibiting at trade events. I've got a client at the moment who's just about to put on a local business trade forum, and it can be a great way to meet new people. You've got to plan it in advance. You've got to make sure that you get out there and speak to the right people, but trade events is a great way to do it. And again, if you set yourself a goal of doing, say, one a quarter, watch as the business mounts up. Undertake a speaking engagements. Again, I'm flying through all of these activities here, but some of you might do some of these already. But are you doing them consistently? So what do I mean by undertaking a speaking engagement? Well, I don't mean standing in front of the Microsoft Worldwide Partner Conference. I don't mean standing in front of the Apple Worldwide Developer Conference. Start small. Your local business networking groups are always looking for somebody to do 10, 15-minute piece to stand up in front of the group and talk about it. I can tell you from experience, by doing that, everybody in the room will look at you as the expert. Don't worry about whether you're a great speaker, a good speaker, or a nervous speaker. Get up there and speak, and people will approach you afterwards and say, hey, I'd like to talk to you a little bit more about what you were speaking about there. So again, maybe you could set yourself a goal of doing one presentation a month at your local business networking event. And as I alluded to earlier on when I said pick up the telephone to call your clients, if you can make the time to go and visit your clients in person. Not to fix the server, not to do support work, to just have a cup of tea with them and say, hey, I was in the area, I thought I'd pop by to see how it's going. You will end up picking up so much business as a result of that, you know, when they say, oh, I'm really glad you're here, right place, right time, as we talked about. So very, very important. So Scott, I think if we move on to the last slide, I'll go through the conclusion, and then we can throw it open in the last sort of 15 minutes we've got to questions. So in conclusion, to reiterate what we've gone through already, marketing is a system. It is not an event. Don't wait until your pipeline is empty before you start marketing, before you start trying to generate the leads. Do it now, do it consistently, and the results will come. Rate yourself through a scorecard. Create that Excel spreadsheet, that Google Apps spreadsheet that I mentioned, and it will encourage you to build good habits. It will encourage you to take those activities consistently, because if you're going to that spreadsheet every week and you're seeing you're not taking the activities, well, you have my permission to give yourself a kick up the backside to actually get it done. As I mentioned, don't let the lack of technique prevent you from getting started. Don't worry about whether you're a good cold caller or not a good cold caller. Don't worry about whether your client testimonials are one-line sound bites or not. Get out there and do it, and while you're doing it, you'll get good at doing it. Don't try to do too much too soon. So I focused on business networking, picking up the telephone, creating client stories. If you're just doing one of those three things, it's better than where you are at the moment, which is doing none of those things. Then incrementally, gradually add to the things that you can do. You know how much time you've got, and you know how much time you've got to do important things, and marketing is important. but don't try and do everything too much too soon, because you'll just end up doing nothing and be back to square one. So start small, create positive habits, and if you go away from this webinar and schedule something in your diary to pick up the telephone or to go to one business networking event a week and can continuously do that over the next month, I virtually guarantee you'll be in a better place than where you are now, and you'll start to see the leads coming through. That will encourage you to get on and to do more of the same, and that's when the results will start to get bigger and bigger. So I'm going to pause there, Scott, and see how we're doing for questions.
Okay, excellent. Yep, lots of questions here. I saved some till the end. You always got to finish big, Richard. That's, you know, that's how we work in the business here. Let me see. Apologize for the noise in the background. We are MSP Business Management Headquarters is going renovation over here. We're going under expansion. It's very exciting over here. So I want to go ahead and read you some of these questions here. Harvey was asking, this is an interesting one. Is there any evidence to suggest that certain types of leads lead to more profitable sales contracts than other types of leads?
Oh, that is a good question, Harvey. I think referrals are really, really important. So one thing we didn't touch on in the webinar there, and because I'm making a presumption that everybody on the webinar is already asking their clients for referrals. So referrals are obviously, it's a very hot lead, isn't it? If somebody's recommended your services to someone else, that's a you know, a hugely positive step towards winning the new business. What I would say, based on what we've talked about, client stories, when you've done a piece of work for a client and they're really happy, and you ask them for that testimony, you'll ask them to, if it's okay to build that client story, it's also the perfect time to say, hey, do you know anybody else I could help out with this? Don't be afraid to ask for referrals. I'm going to take a guess, based on the 60% of the people at the top of the hour who said most of their business comes through word of mouth, that the word of mouth is entirely random. So you do a good piece of work for a client and you hope that they speak to someone else and share that. That's fine, but you can increase the amount of business that you win by saying, is there anyone else that you think I should be speaking to? Don't be afraid to ask for the referrals. So I hope that sort of answers that question there, Scott.
Okay, excellent, Richard. Let's see. Todd had a pretty good one here too, also as well. He was asking, it seems that the majority of activities you are describing would be driven from the business owner or account manager. Are there activities that the marketing team could perform?
Absolutely. So, for instance, the client testimonials, hopefully I gave a good example there of how creating a single client testimonial, and you can ask your marketing department, if you're lucky enough to have a full-time marketing person or an outsourced marketing person, to consistently create those client testimonials, and then it feeds so many other activities that you can take. A single piece of content like a client testimonial can then go and be used on social networking. You can use it as direct mail. You can use it as sales support activities, tons of stuff like this. But in answer to the question, you're absolutely right. I think, you know, the business owner, most of these are probably aimed at the business owner or somebody senior within the team. But actually, there's tons of stuff that other people within the business can be doing. So I talked about client visits. While it's nice for the business owner to be the one making those client visits, there's no reason at all why your engineers can't be doing those client visits. Just say, hey, you know, pop round and ask everybody if they're okay at your client site, see how things are going, do a floor walk, and again, the business will come as a result of doing that. Social media doesn't need to be done by the business owner. As a business owner, and I speak from experience here, we all think that nobody else can do a job as well as we can. So subsequently, the jobs don't get done because the business owner were busy doing lots of other stuff. So please, you know, don't be afraid to delegate these jobs down, to hand responsibility to other people within the business to do. So I see some great examples of MSPs where the social media is not run by the business owner. It's run by not just one person, but all the other team, all the other people within the business. And subsequently, it becomes a really good social media feed because everyone else within the team is talking about what they're doing within the business, which is not necessarily just what the business owner's doing. So I hope that answers the question, but absolutely get everybody involved in the business in these activities.
All right, we've got a regular listener, Shimon. He was here yesterday listening to us. Howdy, Shimon, and he was asking, hey Richard, could you give out some cool tips for cold calling? What are your top couple of tips you might have there, Richard?
Sure, absolutely. Well, thanks for joining us, Shimon. Nice to see a regular on the call. Thanks for taking the time to join me here today as well. Cold calling, of course, it fills everybody, well, most of us, it feels full of fear, myself included. What I would suggest for cold calling is, as soon as people realize it's a cold call, they tend to put the barriers up. So you've got to use, or think, an example of cold calling would be if any of us have been sat at home of an evening, we've had the double glazing salesman knock on the door, and he always starts off with a lie, doesn't he? He always starts off, frankly, with a lie by saying, hey, sorry to bother you here, this isn't a sales call. You think, well, why are you here? It's the worst thing you can do as a salesperson, I think, because then the barriers come up and you eye them suspiciously. So my tip would be, and this takes a bit of guts to do it the first time, it feels uncomfortable, when you're phoning somebody to say, hey, this is sorry for bothering you here, this is a cold call. Can I take 15 seconds to tell you why I'm calling? And then you can decide whether or not we should continue with the conversation. It's very rare, very, very rare, in my experience, for somebody to say, I haven't got 15 seconds. And you've been really upfront and honest with them. It's almost, I've heard it referred to in the industry as a pattern interrupt. So the pattern is usually you phone, you try to sell to them, they hang up on you. Pattern interrupt, if you're asking for permission for just 15 seconds, that's usually enough for you then to start the conversation. So as I said, it takes a little bit of guts to do that. Try it and see how you get on with it.
Excellent. That's a pattern interrupt. That's a good. I think we'll be getting an article out of you on that sometime, Richard. Hopefully.
Sure.
Okay. We do have lots of people asking for that spreadsheet and where they can get a copy of it. So what we'll do is, you'll make that available, Richard.
Sure. I think what we might do, talking of blogs, perhaps I can put some screenshots of that and put it up as a blog post for MSP Business Management, perhaps.
Yeah, that'd be excellent. We could a blank. We could put up a blank, just a few headers on there. 'Cause everybody was they're going through the roof on that one.
Cool.
Okay, we've got just a few more here. Thanks again, everyone, for attending. Also, just housekeeping. I sent a note about this, but to let everybody know, yes, this is being recorded right now. You'll get a link from GoToMeeting that'll give you the exact URL on MSP Business Management where you can download that. So just watch for your inbox, and then also it will be on iTunes. I sent that link around as well. Okay, let's see. Javi is asking a question here. It's kind of playing it on the defensive end here, and he's saying he's a small business and he worries that client testimonials will expose his list of clients to his competitors. He doesn't knows if he wants to display those on his website.
Yeah, I totally understand the concern there. I don't think you need to worry about it. Your clients, if they're doing a testimonial for you, they're saying how much they love you and how much they love the work that you've done for them. So I would be happy to publish my client list for all my competitors to see. Good luck to them to phone up my clients, because what typically happens is my clients, or certainly when I ran an MSP, my clients would phone me and say, hey, I had a phone call from one of your competitors. I told them where to go. So it's, for me personally, it's not a worry. If you've got happy customers, they're going to stay with you. So not a concern. However, if you are really concerned about it, you can sort of anonymize the testimonials. Unfortunately, you're going to lose a lot of the impact there because, frankly, where's the proof that that's a real customer? So my advice here would be, don't worry about it. Your existing customers are always going to get marketing from your competitors. The best thing you can do is to continue to deliver great service to them, and they'll stay loyal.
Well, you just got the big thumbs up from Javi there. He said, good point, very helpful. So that was all good. We've got a couple more here if you've got the time, Richard. We've got, okay, Ray's asking here, to go back to cold calling. Ray's asking kind of a question you hear about a lot of cold calling whenever cold calling comes up in a conversation. He's saying, how do you get past the gatekeepers on the phone? Any tips or tricks? And what if they do not give out the main decision maker's info? What's the best way to move the conversation forward?
Yeah. From experience when I've done it in the past, and again, I'll reiterate the point. So we've had a lot of focus on cold calling. It's if you're anything like me, it's scary to pick the phone up. You don't really want to do it, so don't beat yourself up about it. Cold calling is a great way to do things, but take those other activities. Don't torture yourself. But if you do decide to do cold calling, one of the techniques that typically tends to work, especially with slightly bigger clients, is phone out of office hours or first thing in the morning. So make your phone call before 8 a.m. What typically happens, and as there's a lot of business owners on the line with us today, I'm sure, you tend to be the first person into the office before everyone else turns up, before the gatekeepers turn up. If there's a phone call, you tend to answer it and have a little bit of time to speak to the person. So don't be afraid to make those phone calls, first thing in the morning, or even last thing of the night, just before 5:30, 6 p.m. before the office clears out, because typically the decision maker is in the office at those times and he's in the office on his own.
Excellent. We just wanted, Lee was giving a big thumbs up again. They were saying that, this is a direct quote from them, they just wanted to say that all of the techniques that you're talking about, Richard, work. They've been doing this since the beginning of the year, and they've never been so busy. Right now they've got 100,000 pounds in the pipeline, and at the same time this year they had 1,000 pounds.
Wow.
So,
I'm really pleased to hear that feedback, and thanks for sharing that. And my experience both of running an MSP and of helping my clients to adopt these techniques is exactly the same. Going back to the story about Carl at the top of the hour, my friend Carl Palachuk, if you're taking the activities, the results will come. If you're not taking the activities, then don't be surprised when your pipeline has nothing at all in it.
Yeah, we had a couple people ask about marketing and telemarketing as well, and I know if it's something that you don't want to do, there are a number of companies that do that as a service now. Like I've seen marketing as a service it's a common term people bounce around. There's telemarketing. You can hire telemarketers out to kind of make your calls for you.
Yeah, and we could fill an entire webinar talking about telemarketing, but a quick tip for companies who outsource to a telemarketing company: make sure that people are being measured on results, because you will find no end of telemarketing companies who say, yeah, for $300, $400, $500, £500 a month, we will make this many phone calls, and I've no doubt that they will. But are there going to be any results? Now, there's no guarantees, but what you can make sure is you can say, okay, you're going to make 500 phone calls for X amount of money a month. Ideally, we want to end up with a percentage of appointments at the end of that. That's the goal, isn't it? But at the very least, we want you to collect from 50% or more, you can set the percentage, of the people you speak to. We want to find out who their existing IT provider is, on a scale of 1 to 10, how happy they are. If they could wave a magic wand, what would the IT problem in their business that they'd fix, what would it be? These type of things. If you're setting the telemarketers expectations about what you expect them to deliver, you're going to get lots better results than just saying, hey, here's $500, go and make some phone calls. And I've seen this mistake made again and again and again. Don't just abdicate responsibility to a telemarketer. Make sure that you set their expectations correctly.
Yeah, I think Todd kind of jumped in on the end of that. He was saying he was saying this doesn't seem too personal. He was suggesting you have a potential relationship with somebody you're reaching out to, not just somebody sitting in a call center somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, especially we talked at the top of the hour about in the small business space, it's all about relationships and people doing business with people they like. That's why I've sort of shied away from cold calls. It is a valid method of finding business, no two ways about it. But if you're not taking any marketing activities at the moment, if you're not doing any lead gen, focus on the relationship-based ones. Pick up the telephone, meet people at networking events, that type of thing.
Yeah, I think that was the main thing is that on the slide that we're looking at right here, Richard, is as you're saying, your first point was marketing is a system. It's not an event. It's something you do all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got a couple of questions come in from Twitter.
Okay, take it away.
Share one is less of a question, actually. It's more of a shout-out. So there's an MSP based across there in New York, Barowen Tech, and they have put together a video for other MSPs to actually brand themselves and to get out there. So if you're struggling to create the sort of really cool video that that my client James Kimberley has put on his website, there is other ways to do it. You can go and get branded videos, and if you're on Twitter, you can find them at MSP Builder 1. And I'd encourage you to reach out to them because they've got quite a neat product at a very low price there that's worth people looking into.
Richard, and just to, I think we're out of the questions here, but like a lot of them, we had drips and drabs and people asking about advice, and I just want to say, if you go to Richard's website, and what's your address there, Richard?
Sure, thank you. It's www.tubblog.co.uk. And actually, Scott, if we can just move forward a slide, the last slide I've got there is just a few
yep, there we go.
few methods to stay in touch with me. So yeah, I'd love to hear from you. I hope you've got some value from the webinar here today. More of the same. If you sign up for my free newsletter with news and strategy for SMB IT companies, the link is on the screen. I've already shared that you can get in touch with me on Twitter. Please, if there's any questions that have not been answered here today, do reach out to me on Twitter. It'd be my pleasure to try and help you out there. Feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn, on Google+. I'm on Google+ a lot now, and if you're not on Google+, it's worth checking it out. And then, of course, email. Remember that. Yeah, you can always email me at richard@tubblog.co.uk.
Okay, excellent. And then we have lots of advice on both Richard's website and our website, mspbusinessmanagement.com. I've been sending out bits and pieces of sales letter information on the MSP website. But Richard, you have this kind of information on your side as well.
Yeah, absolutely. www.tubblog.co.uk. And actually, if you're interested at all in working with me on a coaching basis, richardtubb.co.uk is my business site for that. So there we go. The Sally, the plug bit over.
That's good. Well, save the big stuff for the end. Thank you very much, Richard. I've also sent around a link to our webinar for next month, which is going to be on marketing and selling your MSP with Mr. Seth Oxhandler, who runs an MSP down there in Florida, over in the States. And hope you guys can join us for that. And as I said, just watch your inbox for the link to the webinar where you can download it, watch iTunes. It usually pops up the day after we put the link up there. So just keep your eyes. Thank you very much for coming out, Richard. Thank you for being our guest.
Oh, my pleasure, and thanks for inviting me back. And thanks so much to everybody who's got in touch on Twitter and asked the questions. It makes these events a lot of fun. So
yeah, there were mspbusinessmanagement.com is the site again. My name's been Scott Colonico. Thank you very much. Thanks, Richard. Goodbye, everyone.